Hello, class, and welcome. We are going to start Partial 4 by going over some conversion things, and starting with that, we're going to get into just what measurement systems are and why we need to convert between things. So, some of our warm-up questions to get our brains thinking for today are what are some measurement systems that you may know? So, some common ones that we'll learn about are metric system and the imperial system. And then why would it be important to have a universal measuring system? So why does it matter if we have different measuring systems? Why would it matter if Honduras had a different measuring system than El Salvador? Or why would it matter if the United States had a different measuring system than England? So why does this matter at all? And then if you guys do know, I'm just curious, how is the metric system set up? If you guys have already learned about it or just know it on your own, that's a good thing to think about as well. So by the end of the day, we want to understand the difference between our imperial and our metric system, and we want to be able to describe how our metric system is set up. And then last, we are going to work on a couple simple conversions today. So this video does a really good job explaining the metric system and why it matters, and even going way back when we first were learning or doing different trades, back in even like around year zero or even before. So ever since we had civilization, we always needed a way to trade things, to have currency, a universal currency, or maybe even say how much something weighs or how much something is. So it's a really interesting video, I thought. So I hope you guys. But what we're going to talk about first is the metric system. So our metric system is built around base units and prefixes. Our base units are our meter, gram, and liter. And we can see that in our picture right here. When we use meters, we're measuring length. So maybe something like how tall someone is. Excuse me, something like how tall someone is, how far it is from city to city, how long a pencil is, anything with length, how tall a building is, how tall a tree is. Grams are for mass or weight, so how heavy things are. If we go to the doctors, we'll step on a scale and we'll say we are this many kilograms usually, but we're using grams for weights, and then liters are for volume. So a lot of the time I think of liquids like water. Anytime we wanted to know how much water is in a botellón, is going through a pipe, whatever's going on, we would use liters. And then each one of our prefixes are kilo, hecto, deca, our base unit, deci, centi, and milli. And the idea behind this is they're all based on tens. So our conversions are really cool because just by going up from a meter to a decameter, we can divide by 10, and that's how we will convert. Or if we start at a meter and go to a centimeter, we can multiply by 10 and then multiply by 10 again to go to a centimeter. So it's a really nice, easy way because all we need to remember is the order they go in, and then we just know every gap, every time we go up or down, is just dividing or multiplying by 10. It's a very, very nice system that way, where the only number we really need to remember is 10, which is really easy also to multiply and divide by, and we'll practice some of that later. But our metric system was very well designed and makes a lot of sense for, I think, everyone who uses it. So this is a table that is sometimes used. This goes a little bit higher than the one we just looked at. This has mega, micro, and nano. Some of the things we'll need like a megagram for are stuff that's really, really small. So, or if we're talking about like megabytes or gigabytes even, giga is bigger than mega. Gigabytes is like how much storage we have on our phones when we have a lot of little tiny things. Kilos are pretty common for, I think of like kilometers, where we hear kilo as our prefix. Micros, really, really small. That can be common when we talk about looking at very small distances. So when we look at cells, we look at them in the terms of micrometers. So they're so small that they're a micro. And then when we look at atoms or elements, we're talking about nanos. So those are just some more different ones. Here's another video that describes and helps discuss the metric system in a fun way. Um, oh, that's all right. I'll make sure that gets linked correctly in our classroom. All right, so next is the imperial system. So the imperial system, well, it was originally used by the British. It's created as a common measurement such as hand or feet. So the idea here was instead of using a base 10 system, they wanted to use things that were on people all the time. So if maybe you didn't have a ruler or a scale with you, you could simply use your foot or your hand that everyone always has their hand on them. And so that's the idea that it was based around. But as you can imagine, that system is imperfect because everyone's hand is a little bit different. Everyone's foot is a little bit different. So it's not very precise. It may be more convenient or easier because we have some of these appendages always, but it's not always ideal. So the hard part is it doesn't have any organization or uniform idea. So it's not like our base 10 where everything's based around going up by 10, down by 10. It's just random. And so the only people using this right now is the US used it as a colony of the British. So the British made it, and then when they came over to land in America, they said, okay, you're going to start using this system too. So the US was a colony, and then they just kept the imperial system for some reason and stayed that way. There's also one or a couple other countries. Oh, I can't remember the name of this country, but there's one over here, and then I think there's one over here too. So there's three, oh wait, no, maybe it's right here. So there's 3 countries in the whole world that use this imperial system. And then the rest of the world uses the metric system, and some countries use both. So in Honduras, it's common you hear maybe a couple different ones where you'll hear, oh, maybe pounds or kilograms, or maybe you'll hear meters and feet, but it just kind of depends on where you live. So because there's no easy number or easy organization for this imperial system, we have to create all these silly charts because no one can just remember these numbers. So for example, a lot of times when we're cooking, different things happen where we need to know how many milliliters is 1 tablespoon, how many tablespoons is teaspoon, how many milliliters are in a cup, how many milliliters are in 2 pints, a quart, how many gallons goes to quarts, go to milliliters, how many centimeters are in an inch, kilometers in a mile, all these crazy things that no one can remember every single one of them. So we use these conversion charts to help us remember. And now with the internet being so easy to use, a lot of the time it's a very quick, you just type into Google, what's this conversion? But this is how it works, some more charts because we didn't have enough. And then what we're going to talk about is just to kind of get an idea of how big each of these are. So when we talk about liters, we talked about volume, but what does 1 liter really look like? So we can see that in this example, 1 liter is about a water bottle. So even some water bottles, like my water bottle, has it labeled like 100 milliliters, 500 milliliters, and then 1 liter is at the very top of my water bottle. So anytime we hear liter, we think, okay, the size of a water bottle. Anytime we hear milliliter, we think of about 4 drops of water. So if you guys have ever got something in your eye, maybe you had to put drops in your eye to help your eye feel better. And what that is doing is just 4 individual drops is about 1 milliliter. So just to get the idea of how much some milliliters actually are. All right, so next we're going to talk about our appropriate units for meter for our length. So really, what is length? Let's start at the biggest, kilometer. So when we hear kilometer, things that get measured in kilometers are how far it is from like city to city on a car trip. And you guys might have noticed that If you're driving on the side of the road, you'll see signs that say, San Pedro Sula, and give a number, like maybe 100 kilometers away, or maybe 50 kilometers away. And so it lets you know how much farther you are until you get there. Or you also might notice that when we're traveling, we go kilometers per hour. So the number that your speed that you're going is in kilometers as well. Meters is about as far as you can spread your arms, is about a meter. So anytime we think of meter, it's about as far as we spread our arms. There's also meter sticks that you maybe have seen in the classroom, which is also a good way to think about it. Our centimeter is about the width of our pinky finger. So we can see right in here, it's about the width of our pinky finger is a centimeter. And then a millimeter is the thickness of a coin. So really, really thin coin is a millimeter. Oh, meters are for length. Meters are for length. Grams, we have our last base unit is grams. When we talk about milligrams, mg milligrams, we're talking about the weight of a feather. So if you guys have ever picked up a feather, it almost feels like it doesn't weigh anything because it's so light that it's a milligram. When we talk about grams, we're talking about the weight of a paper clip. Still very, very light. Paper clips don't really feel heavy, but it's still noticeable, whereas our milligrams, it feels like almost nothing. And then when we have the weight of a baseball bat, it's about a kilogram. So if you guys have ever picked up a baseball bat, that's what about a kilogram feels like. So what unit would you guys try to use to measure your dog? So let's think about our units. When we talk about weight, we're talking about grams. So would you want to use milligrams, grams, or kilograms? So which one of these three would we pick? Well, we'd pick kilogram. What unit would you try to use to measure the volume of a bathtub? If you wanted to see how much water fit in your bathtub, would you want to use? Our options were milliliter or liter. So if 1 milliliter is about 4 drops, we would need a lot of milliliters. But we would still need a lot of liters, but we would need a smaller number. So the idea is we want to get it to the point where we're having maybe 100 liters, or an easier number to use rather than 100,000, because when we have big numbers, they're hard to use. All right, our last one, our best unit to measure the length of a soccer field. So if you wanted to go from goalie, goalpost to goalpost, it would be, would we want to use our kilometer, meter, centimeter, or millimeter? Well, I think meter would be the best option. So those are just some ideas to get you started to think about our measurement systems, what especially our metric system actually looks like, what happened, like what does a meter actually look like, what does a centimeter actually feel like, what does a liter feel like, and just how much and how big and what the size is of each of those. So I hope that was helpful. If you guys have any questions, as always, please let me know.